I'm Simon Toyne. I am an author, but for tonight, I'm the host of SlaughterFest 2024. And we will be parading in front of you a selection of the finest criminal talent that you could find north of a New York trial, or a Trump trial, I suppose, as you now call it. We also, as a bit of, you may have heard already, as to sort of lighten the evening, give it a bit of class, we also have the lovely Sam on sax. Sax, or Saxy Sam, as I have just decided I'm going to call him. Sorry. Yeah. And he is going to be giving a little flavour throughout the evening, just to sort of, lighten things up, make us feel classy, with a bit of this kind of thing. There you go. Yeah. I told you they'd applaud. Also, Sam, the lovely Sam, Saxy Sam, is going to be helping me through the evening with a few little competitions. You can win things as well. Rather than just having the delight of sitting here and looking at this amazing view and listening to these amazing authors, there are going to be competitions where you can win things, including the brand new book, which is why we're here, Karin's book. Look how great that is, and how massive it is. It's quite big, isn't it? It's making me feel quite insecure, the size of her book. Oh no, here's a real one for you. There you go. That's it. All the authors' books, actually, are available, and they will be milling around later to sign them, and I think I can see some of you already are nursing a large thing of books. So yes, we've got competitions, we've got music, and we've got panels. But I just want to say a little thing about SlaughterFest, because it's become a kind of a bit of a thing. I kind of recognize some of you, actually, from previous ones. And HarperCollins, in their wisdom, when they realized they had this global megastar author in Karin Slaughter, realized that she has the perfect name for a festival. But the first year it didn't go so well, because KarinFest, rather than being attended by lots of crime fans, was attended by lots of quite judgy women with bobs. So they went back to the drawing board and they said, why don't we call it SlaughterFest? And so the legend was born. And how many of you have been to one of these before? I know you have. Look at that, you see? You like it. Much better than KarinFest. Do you remember, were any of you here a couple of years ago when SlaughterFest was Slaughterless Fest? Who was there? You were here. A few people here, yeah. Yes, I know you were here, Liz. Funnily enough, so basically she didn't turn up because she was doing a tour. She was in Amsterdam. She says she fell off a bike and hurt her back. And so she was in too much pain, on too much painkillers to come. So we were Slaughterless Fest. And a weird thing has happened this year, because she was supposed to be here, but she just hasn't turned up. Although she did send this message, which is quite intriguing. I just wanted to see what you make of it.
Thanks, Simon, and hello, everybody. Welcome to SlaughterFest 2024. I'm very sorry I can't be with you today. Unfortunately, I've been kidnapped by a superfan who's broken my legs and locked me in a room with a typewriter and a big pile of writing paper. I'd obviously much rather be there with you, though. On the plus side, I think there might be a pretty good story idea in my current situation, and I'm also pretty sure no one else has ever thought of it before. Anyway, before Nurse Wilkes comes back with the hammer and the medication, I just want to say a bit about SlaughterFest. It was born 5 years ago to launch my new book and also give me a chance to introduce you to some writers I admire. Since then, it has been my privilege to bring together a vast array of literary talent, and here we are, 5 years on, going stronger than ever. I know I speak for everyone soon to be on the stage when I say how grateful we are to you, our readers, for being here, for buying a ticket, and for your support. So what does SlaughterFest 2024 have in store for you? Well, you know from my own books that I love a series detective, so in the Art of Detectives panel, you're getting 4 extraordinary detectives, and we'll also hear from their equally extraordinary creators, Elly Griffiths, Jane Casey, Stig Abell, and Vaseem Khan. After that, in the True Detectives panel, 2 real-life detectives take to the stage as Cara Hunter talks to the experts who help bring authenticity to her novels. They'll reveal the gory truth about what police procedurals on TV and on the page get right, and also what they get horribly wrong. I'm actually kind of nervous to hear what they think about Will Trent. The final panel is a stellar lineup of Adele Parks, Imran Mahmood, Lisa Jewell, and Matthew Blake. In this murderous motives panel, these masters of their genre will discuss how they tackle the tangled web of lies that keeps all of us on the edge of our seats. And to kick it all off, we have not one but two queens of crime, Lucy Foley and Clare Mackintosh, and they're going to be lightly grilled by Ryan Tubridy, who has kindly come all the way from his studio next door at Virgin Radio. Now, I just heard Nurse Wilkes' Bronco driving away, so I'm going to crawl all the way across the kitchen to freedom. If I make it, I'll see you all in person next year with a new book and a slight limp. So sit back, enjoy the evening, and put your hands together for Clare and Lucy.
Welcome, one and all. It's great to see you here. It's great to see so many readers and crime writing fans and gathered in one room together. Hopefully at least 3 of us will be murdered so we can get some material for your next books. All we need now is a plump Belgian to fix everything. But until then, let us sit down and talk about what's happening in your world. First and foremost, I suppose, is why do you think it is that all these people are here tonight reading books like yours, Claire, books like yours, Lucy? What is it? Why is crime so golden? I mean, it's always been popular, but there's something in the shops, they're getting bigger, the shelves are getting more populated. What's happening?
I think there are so many reasons why we love crime, I think. And one of them is that it gives us the opportunity to explore a world that isn't our own. That actually the real world is pretty chaotic, it's full of some terrible things. But when we go into the pages of a thriller, we're going to the extremes of that criminal society, and we can put the book down. Justice has been restored, because justice is always restored at the end of a novel, and then we go back to our real lives.
Yeah, okay. And you concur with this. Do you know what they're saying about Agatha Christie books? That after the war, at least, or during the war, they were selling so hot and heavy because, just like you said, people wanted, in the age of uncertainty, certainty.
And people didn't think they would, did they, at the time?
Yeah.
I remember reading that during the Blitz. They thought no one would, and they just went mad. I mean, when I go back to what I love about Christie, which is really, she's really the first crime writer I ever read when I was way too young, at about 9. It was the puzzle for me. Just the kind of thrill of trying to work it out, feeling a bit clever if you worked out certain things. Never really worked out the big reveal, who done it. But also, I think it's because we all have a dark side, and
yes,
we enjoy exploring that. And I definitely have a dark side. My husband's now like, finally, everyone else sees it too.
Yeah. Because you don't sound like somebody with a dark side. That's what I remember interviewing the first time, going, you sound more like an Enid Blyton person. And then suddenly I was reading your books, going, oh, she's disturbed. I love this woman.
But Enid Blyton was dark.
You're right, actually.
My first crime novels were Famous Five. Famous Five are they're mysteries, aren't they? They're solving crimes. There's kidnapping. They don't quite go as far as murder, but they tie people up and put them in wells.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite dark.
She missed a trick there. She should have murdered George, or one of them.
Not George. George is the best one.
But the dog then, and one of them
Timmy.
somebody should have taken a hit.
You're not allowed to kill
Anne
animals
was a bit
in
boring.
books.
Oh, yeah.
Anne's the
We can kill off Anne.
Anne's the vanilla character.
Why don't we take a vote? Who do you want to be killed from the Famous Five? Let's decide. If we could go back or the Secret Seven, all the Secret Seven, and one of the Famous Five. We'll have a debate about that later. No, we took a swerve, didn't we? Let's talk about, speaking of swerves, I mean, your career was, I think it's one of my favorite career stories in terms of writing and being at university and going to a talk and coming out.
Joining the police by accident.
Joining the police by accident. Who can say that in one and the same sentence?
I'm just very suggestible, I think. I went into the wrong room. I was supposed to be going into a lecture about management consultancy. And I came out with an application form for Thames Valley Police.
Naturally.
I never knew that.
But coming out with the form is one thing, filling it in and then going into the police and then progressing up the rank is quite another, which you did.
I'm a high achiever.
You are a high achiever. At what point did you decide, I've had enough of this, I fancy a bit of that? I'm not talking about the alcohol, I'm talking about the book.
All right, so that was sort of an accident as well. That wasn't planned. I was preparing for my chief inspector exams, a board, and I had to do something called a 360-degree feedback form, where everyone you work with tells you what you're like as a person. And this feedback came back, and it was really great. I was really smug about it. I took it home. I showed my husband. It talked about what a brilliant person I was. I was all, ready to listen and full of energy. And my husband said, I don't know who this woman is. Don't recognise her. My priorities were a bit skewed. So I took a career break for 2 years, and then I wrote I Let You Go, and I never went back to the police.
And off it went. Well, that's the police force's loss being our gain, so congratulations. You, Lucy, I always make the mistake, I think I've done it twice in my ignorance and stupidity, of talking about The Hunting Party as being your first book, but it wasn't. You had written books before that, but of course it was when you came to my attention in that regard. But what was your swerve career-wise that got you in between the covers, as it were?
Oh, I mean, it's so much more boring. It's really just books the whole way. I never knew that writing was something I could even do, or certainly not do as a career, but I knew that I wanted to work with books in some capacity. So I actually worked out recently, I worked in, I think, pretty much every aspect of the publishing industry. I started by working in a bookshop. I was a receptionist at a literary agent's. I was then an editorial assistant, and then a kind of baby fiction editor, and ended up working for a literary scout, actually, while I was writing the second novel. And I think it was just being surrounded by books, people talking about books, people talking about these characters as though they were real people. It was a very sort of inspiring, fertile place. I think it was also the fact that, you very very much see books come in first draft form and realise they're full of holes, they need a lot of work, and that made it feel quite accessible. So I just started having a go. But it was very much like a sort of side hustle that I was doing in my lunch breaks. I wasn't really sure what I was going to have at the end of it.
I love books. I just love them. I know this sounds, but I want to share. We're in a group together now. Books versus Kindle. I'm not anti. No, please don't. No. Just a sec.
Are we going to divide the room?
I'm not. I'm just saying. I got a Kindle once. I tried it. And, I just want a bookmark and a page. I don't want 72%. You have 72%. I just took all the love out of it for me, and I went back on the radio. I said I tried it, didn't like it, and somebody said my mother has become a little infirm. She's got arthritis. A Kindle will be really handy. I said brilliant. I put it in the post. I sent it to her. We all won.
But I think that's one of the reasons I do love digital readers. My mum's hands are fine, but her eyesight's going.
Yeah.
She has the font. I mean, she has about sort of 4 words on the page now, but she can still read. She can read all the books she loves. She has insomnia. She wakes up. She does her 3 words at a time. It's made books so accessible.
What about you?
For
Have you a preference?
I do both. My first love will always be physical books and hardbacks, particularly. I mean, look at that. It's just it's a thing of beauty, isn't it? So I quite often I'm reading the digital or the audio because I'm a big audio fan, and then if I love the book, I'll buy the hardback.
The spines in the shelves in my house I consider to be not only friends but works of art. I think they're beautiful. They're like a painting in themselves.
And the spreads, they're getting kind of more and more beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, you're sick.
How do you keep your books? Are they alphabetical? Are they colour coordinated?
No, what? Hang on a second. Do I sound that mad? They are just fitting in. They fit. They fit there. The only thing I have is one side is non-fiction and fiction. That's about it. And then there's not enough space for so. And I've lots. Anyway, what am I talking about? I'm not the guest.
Mine are just piles everywhere.
What, like, I'm talking...
Just sort of teetering piles.
What's beside your bed at the moment? I'm talking about books, not bodies.
Oh, my goodness. What am I reading right now? The latest Anthony Horowitz.
Oh, it's
Close
brilliant.
to
Yeah.
Death.
Great fun.
So good.
I love his books.
Such
yeah.
fun.
But have you anything good on the...
This is the question that every author fears, because suddenly your mind goes blank and you think, have I ever read a book? What?
I got it. Well, I'll help you. So I'm on a nautical vibe at the moment. So I've just finished not the Wager, but the Wide Sea. So a bit of fiction, non-fiction, and then Knife by Salman Rushdie is a knockout. It's really, I've never read Salman Rushdie before, but that book is really something. So
I tend to have a non-fiction downstairs in the chair where I have my cup of tea in the morning, and at the moment that is The Science of Sleep.
There you go.
Because I'm a terrible sleeper. And then upstairs, I've got, in fact, on my Kindle at the moment, I've got The Midnight Feast. And I've just...
Correct answer, 2 points.
I've just finished the new Ruth Ware, The Perfect Couple, which is really, really good.
Okay, that's okay. I was waffling to get shit to help you trigger your...
Now, I think that's why that question is stressful, though, because I think if you're a big books person, you're often like, well, you've got 5 books on the go. I've got one on audiobook always on the go that I'm listening to in the car or when I'm cooking. I've got the Kindle, the same. read it in the middle of the night when I'm feeding the baby. That's why I love Kindle. I've got a new love affair with my Kindle now because I can do kind of night feeds while I read. And then you've got your hardback and your paperback.
But also, I don't know about you, but if I've just started a book, I don't tend to say publicly on Instagram or at an event what I'm reading in case I don't like it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's
because
a way
wouldn't
around
that be awful to say, oh, I've just started reading such and such?
Oh, yeah.
Where are you in the Midnight Feast?
I love it already.
72%.
I am actually, no, what am I? I'm about 60% through, I think.
61.
But I was so invested from like the first page. I'm a sucker for that kind of rich people, local people, dynamic, and the whole vibe of the sort of private members. I love it.
Thanks, Claire.
Do you want to give people the blurb? Would you like to hear about the Midnight Feast blurb? Of course. Well, why don't you, Lucy? Equally, we'll do the same with Claire. Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, so the Midnight Feast is set at the opening of a new luxurious countryside hotel, which has been built on old secrets beside an ancient wood on the Dorset coast. It's set over midsummer, so they're having this fabulous solstice celebration at this hotel. And also during a heat wave, so tensions and temperatures are rising and some unexpected guests have come to stay. And we've also got this local community who are up in arms about this hotel and everything about it. They hate it. And my literary agent, I'm actually going to call her out on this again, she called it Dark Archers, which I love, which is like the highest form of compliment from her. So I was very pleased with that. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to know how many research trips you had to take to Soho Farmhouse.
Yeah.
It was probably, I did have a couple of research trips, which weren't my, harder assignments as an author, but a lot of it was kind of wishful thinking with two little people, kind of imagining myself in a hotel room on my own. I'm in a hotel room on my own tonight, and it's just glorious.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
We lost you there for a minute.
It was, I know.
Like, oh,
I'm there.
spot the young mum hotel room
it
on my
really
own.
helped, I think, with kind of because I really wanted it in the book to feel like somewhere as the reader that you want to stay, you want to spend time there, and then you sort of judge yourself for wanting to spend time there, and then it gets kind of more and more claustrophobic, and then you really, really, really don't want to be there. You're running in the other direction.
So I think that's what's so brilliant about it is I found myself flipping when I was in the sort of the POV of these people having an amazing time. I was thinking, yes, I want to be there. And then the second the chapter changed and I was all on the side of the local people. You're very clever.
Thanks, Claire. You're very clever, right?
I'll get my coat. Thank you for being here. What about you, Claire?
Just moving.
No, yeah, I'll just move back until I follow the defenestrated. Now, Claire, please.
A Game of Lies is set in North Wales, in the mountains, where a reality TV show is being filmed. The reality TV show is called Exposure, and the 7 contestants think that they have successfully auditioned for a kind of survival-style show. So they think they're going to be catching fish and making rafts and abseiling and all that kind of alpha male stuff. But when the cameras start rolling, the presenter drops a bombshell. Exposure isn't about survival at all, or not that kind of survival. It's all about secrets. The researchers have thrown up dark secrets in each of the contestants' pasts, secrets that will completely destroy their lives. And to stay in the game, they need to protect their secret and expose someone else's.
Who doesn't want to read that immediately?
I really want to watch the show as well.
Yeah.
I would totally watch that show. So when I pitched the idea, my editor said, I really like it, but it's a really dark premise for a reality TV show. Is it a bit unrealistic? And so I went and researched some of the worst reality TV shows that have ever been aired, and 2 of my favourites. So one of them was, I can't remember what it was called. It was an American kind of pop idol type show where they're looking for the best singer in the whole of America. And this young woman gets through to the next round. The next round, she gets through to the final. She's crowned the winner. And then live on air, they say, but actually, we weren't really looking for the best singer. We were looking for the worst singer in America. Can you imagine? And then my other favourite awful show, and to be fair to this is
They've
American
kind of done that
as
with
well.
the presidency recently.
I know. This one was called Who's the Daddy?
Oh, it sounds bad already.
Right? 12 potential biological fathers and one adult contestant interviewing them. I mean, what? America, what do you think?
That sounds terrible. I can't wait to watch it. Oh, that's awful. What channel is it on? We should welcome the men in the audience. You're both welcome. It's so peculiar. I think we spoke about this before, how this report recently said that men read men and women read both. Well, and you said I booked a trend, as you well know. I do. I read everything. Thank God. Jesus, I mean, it'd be a mess if I had to. Anyway, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a bit of just a wide sweep of nonsense, or do you think there's truth in it?
No, I mean, we know it's true. It's there's been lots of studies on it. I think we the publishing industry probably perpetuate that. We know that women read more fiction, and so we are marketing to women. Ergo, more women read fiction, and the more I'm sure we've got lots of book bloggers in the audience, and a lot of them are female, and their audiences are female, and so it's a bit of a cycle. I think it's something we could try and buck.
Lucy?
Well, I was just thinking, though, I have to say, because I wrote historical books before writing crime and thriller, and I have to say the trend was much more apparent to me in the historical space. And I think the thing I love about crime and thriller readers is I think they don't worry about the name on the cover. And I also think, I feel lucky to have these books that don't feel particularly sort of gendered. I think crime and thriller books just want a really good story.
Give us a story.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a few minutes, and I promised I'd take one or two questions from the floor. They said, don't take questions from the floor. But look, they didn't really say it like that. They said it was a much more, don't take questions. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Would anyone like to ask one of our guests a question? If you could keep it short, I'd really appreciate it. Hi. One thing you enjoy about being a writer. This is great. That's a quick fire round, because we've only got 4 minutes now after that. Go.
I mean,
I hope being in a hotel room on your own when you're on the circuit.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
I'm helping you.
Basically, just spending my working life making up people and making up stories and talking about them as though they exist. It's brilliant.
It's politics, yeah.
Writing the end.
Writing the words, the end. Okay. Anyone else like to shout a question up before we march on, because we can. Okay. No. Yeah. Really quick. Go ahead. How do you feel when your readers figure out the plot before the end?
Oh, great question. I mean, obviously, I would prefer that they didn't guess, but I would always prefer that they guessed, because I've put the breadcrumbs there, than that they felt tricked. I think. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, same here. But I'm thick. You said no. I am. I'm really. I get great value for money in the cinema and with books. Because I never, right to the end, and even my oldest daughter, would turn around and go, oh, you are the most stupid man I've ever met. I said, I know, but it's like, I get value. I mean, you must be pleased when your readers, I say to you at the end, you had me right to the very end. Does anyone ever come up to you and say, yeah, I got on page 6,
Oh, yes, I mean, some of
there's
them.
always a fool.
The ideal for me is if a reader gets it, a paragraph before my detective or, detective character gets it. And that, because then the reader feels a little bit clever, but not so clever that it spoiled the book for them.
Okay, that's a great answer.
That's great.
Okay, one more before we go, and then we'll, don't scratch your ear, otherwise you're up. Yep, go ahead, last question. Hi. Great question. How do you get over writer's block in the event that you ever have it?
Just start writing something. Just sit down, start writing something in my notebook. Say, I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes. These are not short answers,
list?
are they? I'm really sorry. Like a shopping list, yeah.
No, but
or just my name 20 times. No, but just start writing something, and often it flows from there.
Right. Okay, great answer too.
Well, I live in the Welsh mountains in a Welsh-speaking area where my books are set, and I go for a swim in the lake where I haven't got my phone, no one's interrupting me, and it's just me and my characters.
God, I like that too. Okay. What a pity. We could definitely do this for another while, but alas, the time is up. And there's tremendous people standing by to come back on. So thank you for your lovely questions. Thank you for your rapt attention. It's been great. That's the benefit of being first. Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks,
Continued success and happiness.
We're going to have a very quick selfie video
yeah,
with
let's do
Ever.
it.
You just have to wave and look happy. You ready?
Let's do it.
Ready, go.
Pretend you're happy, everybody. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for your time.
So the link with that is obviously Clouseau, as most of you knew, was a terrible, terrible detective. But the next panel is going to be about amazing detectives written by amazing crime writers. It's the Art of Detection panel, which is going to be steered masterfully by best-selling author and also host of Times morning radio show, Stig Abell. Give it up for Stig. Good luck.
Just let the music sit for a little bit. It's nice to be described as massive. I'll take that for the start of the day. Thank you so much for coming to this wonderful event. Tall,
yeah, that's what he meant.
Better than massive, yeah. That's fair. Simon mentioned this, but I was telling people I'm going to SlaughterFest, and people looked at me like, what on earth are you talking about? It's some sort of organised orgy of bloody murder and mayhem. And I just want to say as a sort of notice before we start, if you've come here under false pretenses, because that's what you think it is, now is the time to lay down your see-through aprons and your handmade tools and just edge slightly quietly to the exit and leave it to us. Because as we all know, actually, and everyone here knows this, it's the wonderful thing about crime writing, it's actually a very fun and friendly place full of really nice people. It's a very nice place. There's a thin line between slaughter and laughter, and that's something that we all kind of embody here, which is really nice. I'm very pleased to be sitting next to these three wonderfully talented writers. They need no introduction, and when people say that, they then bore on, don't they, with a massive introduction. But I'm not actually going to do that. They need no introduction, so I'm going to give them no introduction, except to say they are all writers of magnificent, hugely popular crime novels that will live on for a long time. In fact, long after we've all been dispatched by the bloodthirsty maniacs who've come to this event under false pretenses. They are, of course, the magisterial Elly Griffiths, the mercurial Vaseem Khan, and the monumental Jane Casey. Please welcome. Now, listen, what they do in this event, they give you a title, it's completely meaningless, and then they say, good luck, have a nice chat. So we're going to embrace that completely. The title is The Art of Detection. Doesn't really mean anything, but I think we want to talk about detectives, why we love them, what makes a good detective, what makes a bad detective. So Dorothy Sayers was famously accused of being in love with Peter Wimsey. I want to know, how much do you need to love your detectives? Just a little bit. Who wants to start? Elly Griffiths. Do you need to love them?
I don't think you need to love them, really. I can't stand Ruth and Nelson. They're so annoying. No, of course that's not true. But I don't think you need to love them, but I think you probably do need to like being with them. You know, if you're writing about them, or we've all written, fairly long series, and Stig, you're embarking on what seems like it's going to be a brilliant long series. So I think you have to not mind being around them and being with them. So I don't think you need to be in love with them. I don't think I could be in love with Ruth or Nelson. I suppose if you were going to ask me which one I was more like, I would say I was more like Nelson, maybe.
Why is that?
Because I guess he drives too fast. He, like me, is a lapsed Catholic. He, like me, drives too fast. He, like me, is a bit impatient. So I think I'm probably more Nelson than Ruth. And Ruth is an archaeologist, which I'm not. She's an atheist, which I'm not. And she is very antisocial, which I'm not. Every time I write the words, Ruth says nothing, I always think, if anyone were writing about me, they would never say those words. And I quite admire her for saying nothing in certain situations. Other times it really annoys me.
Yeah. Vas, do you need to like them?
I don't think so. Agatha Christie famously, towards the end of the Poirot novel, said that she absolutely despised Poirot. I think there's a famous quote where she said he's a horrid little man or something of that nature. So I don't think you have to. I think you can start off loving them, and then the magic begins to wear a bit thin after you've written 62 novels in a series. But speaking for myself, I think it does help. It does help to enjoy spending time, as Elly says, with your creations. And for those who aren't familiar with my books, so I write a series set in 1950s. India, just after Indian independence and the horrors of partition and the end of the British time in India. And my protagonist is India's first female police detective, Persis, she's called. And she qualifies, and nobody knows what to do with her, so they put her in Bombay's smallest police station, Malabar House. And she has to work with an Englishman who's a forensic scientist from the Met Police. His name is Archie Blackfinch, and he's there to help the Bombay police set up a police service. So I like both of these characters, and I like them because Archie represents a lot of the things that I'm interested in, which is forensic science and the way that it's used to tackle crime. But in that particular era, obviously it's not as developed as CSI today, where you can whizzily pump in a bit of blood or a fingerprint and you've got the whole crime solved in about 5 seconds flat, and then you can go around catching the bad guys. But Persis also represents something different. She represents the place of women in Indian society back in the 1950s, which really wasn't a good place. I mean, it's a very patriarchal, quite misogynistic society. And she's fighting this alone. She's the only woman on the police service, and nobody wants her there. And so she's so determined to prove that she's right, that as she and Archie, I mean, there's a will they, won't they vibe throughout the series, obviously, like any good crime fiction.
I want to get onto that, actually, the question of how much you need bedroom aspects in it.
Well, I mean, I'll just end by saying that the other reason that I quite like her is because she's not shy. She's not the demure Indian woman that most fiction of that period, certainly in India, leads you to want to expect. She's quite keen on shooting people, which is, as Indian police officers, they're armed. And she's more than happy to lay someone low with a bullet if necessary. So, yeah, quite like her.
You like them. Jane, all of you actually, it's interesting, you develop these series and then you do occasionally move away from them as well, which might suggest you like them and then you occasionally need to go on a break from them. Is that fair? What's your relationship with your characters like that?
I mean, I always regret writing something that's not the series.
Do you?
Yeah, about halfway through I think, just be hanging out with Maeve. That would be so much easier. I mean, you're lucky I'm here. I'll be quite honest. Because
we all feel that.
I am 3 paragraphs away from finishing the next Maeve Kerrigan book, and I just want to be at home.
And we've dragged you away from it.
Yes.
Do you know what it's going to? Do you know in your mind how it's going to precisely end, or is it going to?
3 paragraphs, Stig. I hope so.
Really? You could change your mind. We could try and change your mind tonight. You can take the series in an entirely new direction in the last 3 paragraphs.
You can tell us. We wouldn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, this woman has caused me more trouble than anyone else, but we'll get on to that. No, I prefer my characters to most people.
Really?
And I prefer spending time, including my family.
Yeah. They're easy
Don't
to
be offended.
They're easy to manipulate, aren't they?
No,
Oh,
but
really?
they're always entertaining.
Yeah.
And I do like that. And I have Maeve Kerrigan, who is a London Irish, fairly no-nonsense Metropolitan Police detective. And I paired her up in the second book in the series, not the first one, because I was kind of writing my way into it. I always think of that joke, when you ask someone for directions and they say, well, I wouldn't start from here. Yeah. That's basically what I did with my series. So I paired her up with Josh Derwent, who is her boss, and they have a very complicated relationship. Yeah. And I just love writing them. So, yeah.
I saw a thing in the paper today which said that there's no sex in cinema anymore. Basically, if you look at sex scenes in cinema, this is going somewhere, don't worry. It's just gone. People have stopped filming sex scenes for whatever reason. They don't bother. Maybe they don't make films they don't make thrillers anymore, so there's not an obvious place for them. And yet, I think there's that Ronald Knox rule, isn't there, from the 20s, that there should be no love story in a detective story. But I kind of feel that's broken by everybody. There needs to be some, I said bedroom aspects, I was trying to think of a euphemism. There needs to be a bit of something, there's something. Do you think, Elly, a bit of tension?
I think so. I mean, I think
not only in your books, in the books you like to read as well.
Yeah, definitely. You were talking about Dorothy L. Sayers. I mean, there definitely is between Peter Wimsey and Harriet Vane. And
she uses French words to indicate sex, by the way.
Oh,
so
interesting.
in the later books, when she says French stuff, she means sex, and she's the only way they're allowed it to write.
Well, there you go.
Do you know how much time I spent looking at a French dictionary, trying to decipher that when I was about 14, trying to work out what was going on?
I don't mind the French words. I have to say the book where they get together, Busman's Honeymoon, which is in some ways a really good book, but I've got to say the bits with them together are really sickening, aren't they? And when they sit there quoting Italian to each other in bed, and he calls her Domina. I mean, sorry, that's revolting. It's just awful. And I think it is a little bit.
That.
Oh, I can't stand that bit. I mean, I love them, but really, as soon as they get together and start quoting Dante to each other, it's too much.
Okay. But there's that great bit which somebody reminded me of recently, where someone says, "Did you have a good night?" after their first night as a married couple, and Peter says, "Parts of it were excellent." You gotta love that.
I'm sure he said parts of it were excellent.
Well, you clearly haven't.
Abbastanza bene. Shut up.
You clearly haven't been watching enough films, Stig, because I saw Oppenheimer recently. It appears to be a lot of sitting around in the nod in that.
And there's a bit.
And I know a lot of scientists, and I can promise you they don't sit around.
And we're all very grateful for that.
That's not what it's like at UCL then?
It isn't like that at UCL. And the other thing
It is exactly like it's like.
Well,
I've heard.
the other thing I'm thinking of very quickly is unintended consequences. So one of the effects of the end of the British Empire in India was that in the 1920s, kissing and sex went out of Indian cinema. So you couldn't have the protagonists doing that. And that's because Indian film directors and producers decided that they didn't want to show stuff on screen which they felt was quite British. And then for about 80 years, no Indian film would have anyone physically kissing or anything of that nature on screen. So what they used to do to show that this kind of activity was going on, they'd have the heroine and the hero doing a sort of dance number in the rain, and then they'd go behind the bush, and then the bush would start shaking. And you'd go, so that was your substitute.
I like the Victorian metaphors in like Portrait of a Lady where Isabel loves a man called Caspar Goodwood. And they're like, Henry James sort of lingers over that name an awful lot. Here's Caspar Goodwood.
Well, the Bond canon. I mean, I was watching Moonraker the other day, and there's a Dr. Goodhead.
I think there's probably a tangent we shouldn't pursue any further. Actually.
I'm surprised.
James, sort us out here.
I'm not going to. I'm surprised that there was ever a sex scene after Top Gun, because it has the worst sex scene in history.
The blue screen sex scene.
And it was added in after
I don't even remember this.
Oh no, it's a silhouette. You see Tom Cruise learning to kiss apparently for the first time.
Yeah, he does not seem comfortable.
That is
No
pursuing
judgment.
the tangent. That's not taking us off the tangent.
I'm sorry.
This explains much.
Yeah. What? About what? No, that worries me.
About Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think it's important? Do you think there is importance of romance or sentimentality? Do you think there's importance in this type of fiction, Jane?
I mean, it is for me.
Yeah. Me
And
too.
I think yes, and it's a massive strand in your books, which I really love, and I really enjoy the sort of personal side of the characters, because they're not sort of machines. They're not just investigating things. They are trying to live their lives.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I really enjoy in a long-running series. And I think, I'm just thinking about the current book and whether it qualifies as crime anymore. It does.
Oh, really?
There's definitely crime in there, but it's sort of, I think we're heading towards hybrid until my editor gets their hands on it.
Is there any blue screen kissing sorts?
Might be.
Really? There we go. You heard it here first. The personal side, I think, is one thing. So I think in the end, we remember these books, don't we? Because the relationships we have with the characters. That's ultimately why the canons exist. It's why we reread. It's why we, as soon as you mention Dorothy Sayers or Agatha Christie or any one of the people in the room today or anything like that, it's because we think of these people as real and we embrace them and we embrace their oddness and eccentricity and their love lives and their difficulties and all that. But it does have to exist, or does it have to exist, in a world of reality? Elly Griffiths, how accurate does it have to be? Your detective, they can be flawed, they can have difficult relationships, they can be human and therefore embraceable, but do you have to make sure they know the right way into a police station, what to do with a dead body?
Well, what I think is, if anyone reads a crime novel, and actually, incidentally, I think that reading a crime novel is a very active sort of reading. It's a very active sort of reading. It's not passive. And I think that could be why crime writers and crime readers are so close, because you are really engaging with that author and you're trying to work out what's in their mind, aren't they? So I think when you're reading a crime novel, though, you have to take a great leap of faith with the author, really. I mean, to be honest, most forensic archaeologists, the protagonist of my books of one series of my books is a forensic archaeologist. Most of them don't get involved with one murder, let alone 15 murders over 15 years. So given that your readers have taken that leap of faith with you, I think you kind of do owe it to them to get the rest of the stuff right, or at least believable.
Yeah,
so
that's a different point, isn't it?
It is different. So I think I try and get the archaeology right. I try and get the police procedure right. I do have a police advisor, as many of us do, and a lot of the time he just says, oh, well, that's what Nelson would do. So, as much as possible, I think I do try to get the rest of the stuff right, because you don't want to have that moment of somebody reading it and thinking, well, that's completely wrong, that could never happen, and that takes them out of the story. So I think it's important to give the illusion of reality, or the illusion of it making sense.
Jane, do you care about that? Or is it something that is incidental to it?
No, I really worry about it.
Yeah.
I hate getting
Have you
anything
had
wrong.
emails?
I've had one email once, and it honestly keeps me awake at night. Is that
Were they
something
right?
really small?
Were they right?
Yeah, I got it completely wrong. It
I had
was.
an email the other day about chicken rearing that I'd got wrong.
I
I was
got.
prepared to hold my hands up for, actually. I don't know about chicken. I shouldn't put them in the book.
Easy to research, Stig. I mean, I'm not judging you, but go online.
And there's supposed to be a
Still there.
small readership. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but chicken people who know
Chicken
about
people
it.
who care about crime books. Yeah, small but
possibly.
vociferous, I found,
Yes,
actually,
yes.
as it happens. Jane, what was your one?
One of the worst sort of interactions I've ever had with a reader was about whether black and white collie dogs are neurotic. And I'd said they were, and she was very offended. She
Hard
said
to
she'd had,
disprove, isn't it?
she'd had 13, and they were all completely normal. But I don't think she was completely normal. I'm not sure she was judging it.
We've
by
got
the
a
same
scientist
standard.
here. I'm not sure just saying you've had 13 dogs and they were all normal is enough to actually prove it either way.
Dogs do get depressed. There was a great piece in the newspaper today about some research that had been conducted on elephants. And they'd used machine learning to look at the sounds that elephants made to each other. And they realised that elephants give each other names.
Yes.
But isn't that bonkers? Isn't that amazing? I quite like what you said about the fact that crime readers and writers are quite close, because we are quite a close community, right? I mean, we're a bit like the Amish. We don't build as many barns together as we should, but we root for each other, and we have our eccentricities, namely that we all like a spot of bloody murder. But overall, I think for me, when you're thinking about your detectives and what you want them to do in terms of the reality of the cases that they're pursuing, I think you only need to be as real as it takes to keep the narrative moving along swiftly. That's all. Because if you get bogged down in reality, I mean, DNA analysis takes weeks, if not months, sometimes to get through. It's not a question of just plugging it in and then you get the result in about an hour and everything's done and dusted in a 50-minute episode of CSI.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of Amish, by the way, there's a good sex scene in Witness, which is the great film.
Yes.
I don't want to pursue this tangent to death.
What a great film.
I sort of feel like you have a spreadsheet.
I don't know why. I thought about it before 5 minutes ago, and there's a fertile area there. You raised an interesting point, Elly, which was you wouldn't have 15 murders investigated over 15 years by a forensic archaeologist. And this is what might be described as the Midsummer Murders problem. And I'm really interested in this because I've run 2 books set in a very, very rural, isolated place. And the question I'm kind of professionally interested in as well as just intellectually interested in, does that matter? Because ultimately, there's got to be some suspension of disbelief here, hasn't there? Ruth wouldn't be able to solve all these crimes. None of these people would be able to solve all these crimes. Life gets in the way. There's stuff they wouldn't be able to solve. It can't be that accurate, can it? Otherwise, you just write, and actually, as it turns out, no one knew who did this. Sorry, goodbye. And it would end, and that would be no satisfaction to anybody.
No, I don't think that's true. And I think actually since the Garden of Eden, there's something about horrible things happening in beautiful places. I do think there is something. But I was on a panel last weekend with Anthony Horowitz, who of course wrote Midsummer Murders, came up with the concept and wrote. And he said that they told him to always kill someone before the commercial break. So he did that. But then it became really popular and there were many more commercial breaks. And that's why so many people die in Midsummer. It's entirely the fault of the... So I think, I mean, my excuse in Norfolk, because the Ruth series is set in Norfolk, is that, Norfolk is full of bodies. Because it's been inhabited for a very long time. The oldest human footprints outside Africa are found in Norfolk, Haysborough, Norfolk. So there are many, many bodies. I mean, some of them may have been dead for thousands of years, but there are many bodies there. So in a way, I don't think it matters if you pile up the bodies.
And there's that point about in the countryside, no one can hear you scream.
No, and I mean it's a different sort of thing, isn't it? Because you do have the countryside can be sinister in a very different way from the town. So
there's that great bit in Sherlock Holmes where they're on a train. And Sherlock Holmes is there with Watson, and Watson's going, oh, look how beautiful it is, it's lovely. And Sherlock Holmes says, no, in these isolated places, strange things can happen, which is a great
Well, it's like
motivation.
Chester d'Urberville's darkness and silence ruled everywhere around. Above them rose the primeval oaks of the chase. Where, oh where was Tess's guardian angel?
There we go. Class this joint up. I talk about sex in films. You bring out Thomas Hardy. Why not? Does it matter to you the fact that ultimately you're going to have your people solve stuff in a way that is probably not going to necessarily make sense if you do several books in the same series?
Yeah, well, I mean, Persis is a policewoman, so she's got to follow police procedure to a certain degree until you go off the rails, as all good cops should do. And Archie is a forensic scientist, so he's going to promote the cause of forensic science during these investigations. But the fact is, I mean, you say no one can hear you scream in the countryside, but in a place like Bombay, which has 20 million people, no one can hear you scream then because it's too bloody loud.
Yeah.
And there's too many people. So,
and actually, there's probably any number of murders. You'd have the problem there. That would be realistic, several murders.
I mean, if we're being realistic, and we're talking about research earlier, there's research that I think generally shows that I think in any given population, 3% of the individuals exhibit sociopathic tendencies, according to the classification by the FBI.
So in a room of 200 people,
exactly, there's six people.
I thought it was 1%.
Yeah, there's 6 people. I mean, Lisa Jewell's a bloody maniac.
Yeah. And they've come to SlaughterFest anyway, so it might be higher than actually.
Self-selected,
No,
yeah.
now that you think about it. What about you, Jen? Does it bother you?
Bit of a slacker because she's a
That's what I like about it.
police detective. She's got a caseload of different murders at different stages of investigation, and obviously I focus on one at a time, which is not really realistic. She wouldn't really be able to devote herself
That's true.
completely.
Because in the Michael Connelly books, he sometimes does a thing where they investigate 3 or 4 crimes. That's quite a weird thing in a detective novel, isn't it? That we tend to be very single-focused. Could you ever imagine writing a sprawling one? I mean, Joseph Wamber does it in some of those sort of Hollywood-type
But that is the reality of how cops
And Robert
work.
Galbraith does it.
Yeah, I mean, could you do that? Would you be able to sort of run 3 cases at once? Is that doable, or would that send you mad?
I've got all the personal stuff to fit in. Somebody was asking me today about one of the minor characters and whether they were in this book, and I was like, oh no, I've got to fit them in.
You've got 3 paragraphs left, and I'm saying you could probably solve a murder in that time. Add another
Throw in
one
another couple. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go easy on the readers as well. There's a limited number of things that people can keep track of, and I think,
Just one thing, that's fair enough. I've got 4 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask a couple of quick-ish questions for you before we go. And it's been so lovely speaking to you and hearing all your thoughts about this. Best thing about writing a detective series, Vas?
Well, I just go back to why I read books, which is to go to new places and periods and meet new people who perhaps are outside of my regular frame of reference. I mean, I have readers around the world, and it surprised me that most of them are not anywhere near the subcontinent. They're in Britain, they're in Australia, they're in America. But the connection they have to characters who are set in 1950s India always amazes me.
And with a series, you can kind of build something.
You can build that,
people
build that interaction. Yeah.
Elly, what do you like about it?
I think it's part of the reason why, one of the reasons why we love crime, isn't it? And we find it comforting in a weird way, because it's about, even though it's about awful things, it's that comfort when you're reading a book and Maeve comes in, or Perseus, or Vera. You think, oh, that's okay. I know these people. I'm safe with them. I'm safe in their hands. So I think it's one of the nice things about writing them is being with those people again and feeling that they will take you through the book.
Jane Casey, the worst thing about writing a detective, which is why you stop doing it occasionally and write standalone books that disappoint people because they just want your series to continue.
No, it's not like, it's not that. But I think the worst thing is worrying about disappointing people.
Yeah.
Because people have a really strong relationship with the characters, and they have very strong opinions about what should happen. And the ending of A Stranger in the Family has been controversial, which I'm not going to say too much about, but I will say Elly Griffiths told me to do it.
We're sharing blame out.
I'm afraid I did, yes.
We were on a beach together. It was very romantic. And I said, should I do this ending?
Take romantic holidays together?
What happens in Alderney stays in Alderney.
Really?
Yeah.
We nearly stayed in Alderney.
We did.
At all.
We really did.
No, it was the whole anecdote. Don't worry, ask us later.
You didn't build a barn
And I think
together.
Baz nearly died in a plane crash in Alderney. So,
have to
yes,
say.
I did say that.
It was very
I'm sorry.
Bruce Willis, Die Hard, trying to get to Alderney.
The Alderney Tourist Board are not going to want us to go.
That sounds amazing though. A bit of Die Hard, a bit of
It's a
romance on the beach.
It's lovely when you get there if
It's
you
a
can
beautiful
survive the
place.
flight.
Okay, before you go, You've been wrongly accused of murder.
Again.
Which detective, you can't have any of your own, do you want investigating your case on your behalf? From all of fiction, the detective you want in your corner. Who wants to start?
Sergeant Cuff from the Moonstone.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
He talks a lot about roses, but he does get it right in the end.
Gets it right.
And my real name is DeRosa, so that's fine.
There we go.
Scooby-Doo and the gang. I mean, come on. They always get the perpetrator.
Those meddling
Always.
kids.
Those meddling kids always get the
We've got
perpetrator.
away with it. Jane Casey?
I think Inspector Morse. I
Very
feel like
solid.
he'd be, he would hold my hand and
Okay.
he would play lovely classical music to me. And it would be
Yeah.
nice.
You'd want to do more than hold your hand, I suspect.
Let's not go there.
Well, you know what happens to people he falls in love with, Jane.
yes,
He's very,
it's not good.
very careful.
Listen, thank you all so much for coming. I think we've learned a lot today. We've learned that at least 6 of you are sociopaths. We've learned that elephants call each other by actual names. I've got a slightly unhealthy obsession, clearly, with sex in films I wasn't aware of, so I'm going to go and sort that out now. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of this great, great web of people, which are people who love crime fiction. It's the best thing about writing crime fiction. Everyone knows it. You're all lovely. These authors are lovely. Give them one round.
Thank you to Stig as well.
Thank you, Stig.
So obviously, Sherlock Holmes is probably the most famous fictional detective. But in all of that, as crime writers, getting our fictional detectives right often involves, because if you can get stuff right, you should get it right, as was discussed a little bit in one of the earlier panels. And so we all tend to have our go-to guys, real detectives, policemen, forensics people, who will basically tell us how bad our first drafts are and how we need to change everything. And to share a bit of that process with you now, on the next panel, which is the art of detection, we have Cara Hunter, and just ignore this person here. Cara Hunter and her two true detectives.
I thought there was a proposal in the offing then.
So the first thing to say for this is that we're actually recording this because the three of us now have a podcast, which is called Watching the Detectives. And it's all about what does TV crime get right and what does TV crime get wrong. Because we actually did this sort of a session, a bit of a longer one, last year at the Oxford Literary Festival, and everyone just kept coming up to us and saying, you need to do this as a podcast. And then we went back this year to the Oxford Literary Festival and did it all over again, and everyone said the same thing again. So the first episode of the podcast is actually the live recording from Oxford this year. We've done one since then, and we're doing one tonight. So you can go and find it, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcast, as everyone always says. So how did I meet these two guys? This is the first question. Well, when I wrote Close to Home, which is my first detective book, as some of you may know, I didn't actually ask for any help from any experts at all, because I thought, look, I'm just a wannabe. I can't go up to somebody who's doing a really important job and doesn't have enough time to do that job as it is and say, this is my book that may never be published, would you have a look at it for me? I just didn't think I could do that. So I just did a whole lot of ferreting around on the internet, and you can find an awful lot out on the internet. And of course I watch loads of crime on TV, but as we'll come on to later, that isn't necessarily a good place to learn. So when it was actually picked up by my first publisher, my then editor said to me, wow, this feels really authentic. You must have spoken to loads of police officers. Whereupon I fessed up and said I hadn't actually spoken to any. She laughed and she said, I think you need to find yourself a police officer. Well, that's easier said than done. You can't just sort of bowl into a police station saying, anyone fancy talking to me about my book? Anyway, I actually had a friend who's a local councillor in Oxford, which is where the Foley books are set. And I thought, he's bound to know a policeman. And he put me in touch with Andy Thompson, who was at that time the area inspector for the part of Oxford that I live in. So I actually went and met Andy at St Aldate's, which is where Adam Foley works. So it was all destined to be. So that's how I first met Andy, who has now gone back out of uniform and is now an active DI, and that's really important because police procedure changes all the time. So you really need somebody who's actually working rather than retired. As for Joey, Joey I met through a friend of a friend. And so we actually sort of knew each other before I started writing the Foley books. And Joey has a CSI training, and he actually advised the TV series Hinterland. I don't know if anyone saw that. I thought it was fabulous. At one point, Joey's hand in a blue glove appears in the series. Look out for that. And what Joey doesn't know about forensics isn't worth knowing, but you do have to be careful, as I have learned over the years. For example, I made the mistake of sending Joey an email saying, what happens if someone gets shot in the face at point blank range? And he sent me a photo. This is not a silent witness mock-up.
I should have set a trigger warning.
It's a trigger warning.
Pun intended.
So I have now known, I'm now careful about what I open from Joey. And also, if you have read Murder in the Family, you might recognise, if you just see here, the CSI expert in Murder in the Family, who's called J.J. Norton, is modelled by Joey. There we are, Joey. And I even stole some of Joey's CV for this CV. So you'll have to ask him, because is it, for example, that he did, he attended an autopsy of someone half eaten by a killer whale? Is that true, or is that made up? And also that he used to have a pet tarantula. So you'll just have to ask him later, which bits of this CV did I steal from his and which did I make up? So anyway, so moving on to what does TV get right and what does TV get wrong? So we discussed Sherlock Holmes just now. Famously, the two of them on their own, investigating crimes. My books, my Foley series, are set in Oxford. Morse and Lewis, the only two detectives who appear to work in the entire city, taking on the entire investigation on their own. So, Andy, is that how it works? Is there just two guys looking to investigate?
Yeah, I always say it's quite boring when you get to the reality of things. Certainly from an inspector's point of view, there's sort of saying that as you go up the ranks, you become more a parent than a detective, looking after your team and their personal issues and that side of things. And when it comes to murders particularly, it is because of the significance, because of the rightful, the attention it gets, you've got to put everything into it. So there will never be two people. It's certainly with, and inspectors, I tend to go on quite a bit. I haven't interviewed anyone for a long time. I don't do door knocks.
He always does this to me. He keeps saying, Adam, where does he get the time to do all these interviews?
My job is normally, as an SIO, is to write the policies and what we're going to do, the big decisions about what we're going to do, who we're going to arrest, how we're going to do it, that type of thing. And also the lovely thing of, I go to the post-mortems as well, which is also always a lovely task to do. But those are really, from inspector upwards, it becomes very much more office-based. So you are reliant on your teams of detectives and sergeants to go out and do the doing, which is the bit I miss, because I joined the police to be out there. I still love it sometimes when something happens in front of me when I'm off duty. And I'm like, I get to go back to being a PC and doing the fun stuff again. But generally, we're more directing all the strategic side, those big policy decisions. So it can be boring, but then you do get I say good jobs. It's terrible to say in a murder is a good job, but it's an interesting job when we say that, because you really have to sort of get your thinking caps on and get the whole team working together and come up with the ideas, because two people, one person, if I'm in charge, let alone two people, do not have the answers to everything, and you can dismiss some ideas that some people on your team have. You'll be fooled to sometimes.
So this idea that only two people can solve things, in fact, no. It's always
I couldn't even do a file. Not a chance.
And so, Joey, we have the murder, we have the CSIs turning up, and most of the time on TV, they aren't even dressed in the right gear, are they?
Yeah, what's that about? Like, TV producers, here I am, right? Come talk to me, I'll sort it out. It's not difficult. Put some gloves on at least.
There's a nice sort of dichotomy going on here, because Andy really dislikes Line of Duty and says it's not accurate in terms of police procedure, whereas Joey really likes Line of Duty because they're covered up to the eyeballs in white plastic when they're doing the CSI stuff. So you two sort of agree to disagree on that one.
But you like Dexter as well, where they have
likes a strong word.
Sandals.
So we wouldn't. There's no fisticuffs, is there, mate? We're all good. And if there were, I think we could do a crime scene and leave no evidence, couldn't we? So
perfect.
No one would know.
The dangerous thing is that Joey's writing a crime book. Oh my God! So he knows exactly how to get away with it. So what happens? Okay, so let's start from the beginning. You turn up at a crime scene. It's the police officers rather than the CSIs who get there first.
Yeah, so contrary to lots of TV, certainly American TV, we don't have everyone walking through our crime scenes wearing, as I say, Dexter, as I watched the other day, their sandals and flannel shirts and all sorts. It's just, what are you doing? We shut the scene down. We obviously reassure ourselves there's no one else hurt, injured. We reassure ourselves that the person is dead and not alive.
It's a start, isn't it?
Potential life. There are stories that go back in the past around that sort of thing. But then you really do, you close it down because you don't want to interfere with anything there, because the more interference in that scene after you've got there, the more evidence you're likely to lose and those golden opportunities. And then you come to someone like Joey, our crime scene managers, and say, right, what do you think? We get the experts in because I don't know everything. So where do you think the opportunities are here? And depending on the body may say in situ, and you do all the sort of forensics around there. You may even call the pathologist if it's particularly sort of complex scene to sort of come in and have a look, because they will give ideas around mechanics of injuries and what you might be looking for. And you just do a very methodical approach, and you fight off all the young officers in uniform that want to come and have a gander and sort of see a dead body and all those lovely things that we do, and just slow it all down, just to sort of make sure you're methodically working through the scene. Obviously, in the background, you're doing all the research around the address, the people, any intelligence around it. You're doing the house to house, you're checking the CCTV. But that scene doesn't get touched until the crime scene manager sort of is happy for you to do it, and they'll tell you the best way, in their opinion, of how to do it, what experts you want to bring in. And you're a fool to ignore them, because if you ignore them, it will get called up in court, and that's when you come a cropper. Really, the integrity of your evidence sort of starts to get questioned. Why are you ignoring the experts?
So Joey, you turn up, white suit.
White suit, yeah.
Blue gloves.
although I know in this instance we're talking about a murder, so yes, we would have the white suits on, and there'd be quite a few of us working that. But crime is split into two different types of categories generally. You've got your major crime scene, so that's your things like your murders and your sexual assaults, armed robbery, that kind of thing. And then you've got what's called volume crime. It's not volume because it's loud, it's volume because it makes up the greatest amount of crime. And it's usually around about 95% volume crime and then 5% major crime. So the volume crime will be things like your burglaries, bicycle been stolen, could be you've been involved in a little fight, not a serious fight, because like a GBH, sorry, that would be a lot more serious. And so in instances like that, it might just be a single CSI that's going there on their own. And if it's something like a burglary, for example, then you might have, well, you would have gloves and a face mask on to prevent you from contaminating with your own fingerprints and DNA. But you might not go all the way with a scene suit on and overshoes. It all depends on the severity of the crime scene. And it may well be, depending on which police force area and what the force priorities are, the sad truth is now that you might not get a police officer at all attend the crime scene, if you even get a CSI. That's a separate conversation which we're not here for. But in relation to a murder scene, yes, you get your CSIs in, and Andy's absolutely right. You would have a crime scene manager or coordinator, depending if there's a major scene with lots of various other scenes, and each scene will have a manager, and then there'll be a coordinator who'll be very senior at headquarters talking to the SIO, that's the senior investigating officer, calling that shots on the forensic strategy. But when you're actually at the scene, then you're looking at the crime scene as a whole, and you are thinking about what to do and in what order as well. So the first thing that we do before we do anything with a crime scene is to record that crime scene. And that could be making notes, drawing sketches, taking photos, videos, whatever it is. And I've mentioned this before in other talks that we've done, but once you start interfering with that crime scene is lost. And the whole point of preserving that crime scene is so that when you get to court, you can show those photos and videos to the jury, and they can have an understanding of the context of the crime scene. Because context within forensic science is incredibly important. And you can take DNA evidence as a really good example of that. Yes, your DNA, Cara's DNA, might be on something, but the science can't tell us when it was deposited and how long it's been there and whether it got there as a result of the crime or whether it was secondary transfer or tertiary transfer. And so just because Cara's DNA is there, it doesn't mean that she killed Andy. Sorry, mate, it's just because you're next to me.
Though it's quite possible, yeah.
it could just be because she was in a different location and the actual murder picked up an item that she came in contact with and her DNA was deposited that way. So the context is incredibly important with the crime scene. But once you've recorded the crime scene, then you can go in and you can start collecting your evidence. And that can be your fingerprints, it can be DNA swabs, you could be taking items like books, for example. We wouldn't necessarily fingerprint those at the scene. Paper, plastic bags, that kind of thing. We would take them back to the lab and then we would put chemical treatment processes on there, like like super glue for bags and ninhydrin for paper. You could also be doing footwear casts. There's loads of things that we could be doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will always do it. It depends on the circumstance of the crime scene. If there's been a bludgeoning, for example, or like a really horrific stabbing, then you might call in a blood scientist, right? A blood pattern expert, like Dexter, there we are, to come in and analyse that scene. But if there's no blood, then you wouldn't call that person. Just like with an anthropologist, you might call them if you've got bones discovered in the back garden. But if there's no bones, then why are you calling an anthropologist? So those are the kind of discussions and decisions that would be made or recommended by the CSI and the forensic experts. But ultimately, I think, Andy, I'm right in saying that it's the decision of the SIO. You're in charge of that case. So you could choose to ignore the advice. Yeah. But like you said, that might come back and bite you in the arse when you get to court. Bite mark analysis.
Bite mark analysis. We have talked about this before because that's one of those things that you see in CSI. They're particularly sort of snazzy when they have all of these sort of computer graphics and they have bite mark analysis and they press a button and it comes up, oh, it's a match. No, it isn't. Bite mark analysis is notoriously inaccurate, isn't it?
Well, yes, it can be. Like anything that's scientific based, you've got to apply your scientific rigor. So providing you've done enough research and you've done validation studies, then the evidence could be more reliable than if you hadn't. But the fact is that there are various different types of category of evidence. So fingerprints and DNA are usually considered to be, the gold standard of evidence. And then you get further down in hairs and fibre analysis and bite mark analysis. Now, that doesn't mean to say that they're not useful to the investigation, but you have to consider what strength of evidence has that given you for your investigation? And is it evidence that you want to rely on in court, or could it be undermined by the defence? And so when it comes to bite mark analysis, that is a real thing, and there is forensic odontology. So it is a recognised discipline, but how successful it is used in court is another matter. And that comes down to various other factors. Yeah, whereas things like DNA and fingerprints, fingerprints have been around for over 100 years in terms of criminal investigations. In reality, they've been used, I think, by the Chinese as far back as 3000 BC, in fact. But in modern day, we're talking about 1901 or thereabouts, and DNA was around 1986, and first use exception about 1987, 88. So relatively recent, but used pretty much all the time.
I think the real challenge sort of I've had in the career, most of the murders that happen, you have an idea who the suspect is. They're not stranger murders. The suspect will be known to them. So there may be valid reasons for them to have their fingerprint DNAs. I worked in domestic abuse for 6 years and had a fair few of those there. So you know who your suspects are. With the world now, how many people have children that know more about their phones and digital than they do? Sure. I'm exactly the same. Yeah. Yet the digital world is huge. We get our trained officers and they reel off and talk for 10 minutes about all the stuff. I'm like, yeah, we'll do that because I have no idea what you've just said, but it sounds really good, and I think I'd be a fool not to listen to them. But
there are people who've been caught through their Fitbits, aren't there?
Because there's so much.
Who claim to be. I was asleep in bed. Only your Fitbit says no, you are not. You were up at 3 o'clock in the morning and running around the house. So what were you doing?
We all know our devices are listening and our Alexas are listening, and there are things that can be done around that, and the wealth of data there. Is huge. So for the physical side, absolutely, it's like, bam, there you go, there's your result. You download a phone, and they always say, like, if you were to download it and print it on paper, you'd be filling Arctic lorries full of just sheets and sheets that someone's meant to go through. Now, there's been a lot of change and guidance around that, being proportionate about what we look for. But yeah, when we're talking about this evolving digital world, yes, there's opportunities around it, but there's an awful lot of work that goes around it as well at the same time.
Absolutely, it can lead and has indeed led to miscarriages of justice, which perhaps we could do an episode of.
Do a whole episode on miscarriages of justice.
Yeah. But in relation to the digital forensics, yes, it's a real good point that Andy touches on, is that it's increasingly becoming more and more important to investigation rather than the fingerprints and the DNA. And as Andy mentioned, and it ties back to my point earlier about the context. Okay, yeah, so you've got a domestic violence situation. How beneficial is the fingerprint and DNA evidence going to be? probably not very beneficial, but what about the other things you've got in your house, right? We call it now the Internet of Things. So the Alexa, some people have smart switches that turn the light bulbs on and off and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, not everything will have a microphone and not everything will have a camera, but the point is that you have these devices in your house and they are connected to your internet. And if it's connected to your internet, you can get your IP address and you can get a whole host of information, which as individuals committing crime, you probably wouldn't think about. You get so used to them being there. But as investigators, we know which of the, I'm going to horrifically paraphrase a Sherlock Holmes quote here, but to pull at the scarlet thread until you get to what you're looking at. And it could well be that your Alexa has picked up, or something else has picked up and recorded the sound of a domestic incident.
And there's been cases
Indeed,
like that.
with child abuse as well. I think some people have been successfully convicted. So the physical forensic evidence probably not going to help you there because of the context of what you're looking at. But if you've got someone who comes out with a straight denial and says, no, that definitely never happened, I never touched a finger on them, I wasn't even here, and then a digital forensic investigator can log on and go, well, your Ring doorbell had you walking in the house at this time. Your Fitbit has you there on the GPS. This Alexa or your cameras or whatever have recorded the incident that you say that you were nowhere there. I mean, you're in a different kettle of fish there.
Well, it also shows that how difficult. I mean, I used to write historical crime. Oh, God, that was easy by comparison. I didn't even know whether it was animal blood or human blood. You know, Sherlock Holmes, by comparison, had life easy. But now you can see how difficult it is if you want to get things right. And I do try to get things right as far as possible. I know it's really, really hard to sort of weave your way around all the things that can happen that would actually give away the story. I mean, certainly these days with Joey, when I get an idea for a book, I talk to him before I put pen to paper because I think, well, I'm not going to spend 6 months writing this thing. And then I give it to him to read and he says, oh, page 5, I know who did it. You know, what's the point? So it's really hard to actually find a story where there's a degree of still a suspense element because so much now can be found out, as you say, either through our devices or through the real sort of nitty-gritty of forensics, like touch DNA. You know, everywhere we go, we're leaving a trace.
I think that's my learning working with you over the years of like, I say they're fairly simple murders. We know that who's done it. When I read a book, I have to sort of step back and go, okay, there's going to be a fair few twists in this book coming out. I'm going to think it's one person. I'm going to think it's another person. I just have to ride that wave. So they get to the point where I'm happy who it is. So that's taken some learning.
Oh, well, thank you. If this guy could actually read it and still find it interesting, then I think I've probably done my job. But also back to the idea of what the CSI does. I mean this whole silent witness thing where the CSIs go off and do their own investigation. I mean, that's
yeah, I've
nonsense,
never known that to happen. No, I mean, I'd love it if that was the case, or maybe I wouldn't, because the investigation, it can take a lot of time. It's a lot of man hours, isn't it, Andy? I mean, especially with some people in CID, they could spend weeks just trawling through CCTV footage or doing door-to-door and going through statements. And so it's very methodical. And the same is true with the forensic science as well, is that I think there's a misconception among the public, and I don't mean this to belittle any of you. I was in the same position before I got into the profession. But you think that it's quite glamorous and quite exciting and quite interesting, and it definitely can be those things. But science is fundamentally methodical and repetitive. And about 99% of forensic science and techniques you do don't necessarily lead anywhere. But you've still got to do them, and you've still got to follow the scientific principle and the scientific method, and you've still got to ask hypotheses and try and prove and disprove, because that's our job as scientists, is to put forward some verifiable, independent evidence to the police to then make a decision and go to the CPS before we realise we're going to charge. But from a CSI perspective, all right, I might have been employed by the police, but my duty is to the court. My duty is getting to the truth of the matter. And I had been in an uncomfortable situation with a CID officer when I was relatively new, and they said, Joey, is there any evidence to prove so-and-so did this? And I said, no, there isn't, sir. And he said, well, I need you to find the evidence. Now, he wasn't suggesting I needed to plant the evidence, but what he was basically was suggesting was that I know that evidence that is there, you need to find it. And the point I was making is that I have applied the scientific method. I have done the testing that you have asked for of the exhibits that we have available. It does not suggest that your man is responsible for it. Doesn't mean that he wasn't, but the evidence doesn't back that up. And so I think it's very important to realise that, yes, it can be exciting and it can be very interesting. And I think the books are fantastic. But the reality, and I think, Andrew, you might probably back me up here, is that the reality of the day-to-day is it can be very mundane and very repetitive. But it's that that one gold nugget, that one really interesting case where you do lead to a prosecution and you think, yeah, this is what makes it all worthwhile.
It is that thing. We are constrained. And actually, if you went rogue like Luther does,
Don't get me started on Luther.
You would never get a case to court in the first place. So you have to follow, the procedures are there, the integrity of everything is there. Because I'd say if you start flying off, if I was to go out and say start challenging everyone on their doorway.
You'd have to buy you a long dark coat as well, which
yes,
yeah.
true. And, yeah, just think about what we've got to wear even more. But yeah, we are constrained. But that is the art of the fiction side. You can have that.
It's about a balance and a compromise.
Yeah, and in real life, it's important to have that constraint, to have the check and balance on the state and the power that the state yields. And so perhaps that would be another podcast we could do. Episode.
Well, which nicely brings us to the end of this episode of the podcast and the event tonight. So thank you all very much.
So to do our final panel for the evening, so we don't get thrown out of the building mid panelizing or whatever the word is. Welcome to the stage, Imran Mahmood, who is going to introduce you to his panel of murderous motives. Here he is.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Fantastic.
Good start.
Yeah, we've got volume. Well, it's an honour and a thrill to be in front of you gorgeous people, hosting these gorgeous people, 3 literary giants. In fact, they're so gigantic, I don't think I need to introduce them. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit, but I can tell you we have got Adele Parks, first of all. Not just any old Adele Parks. This is Doctor of Letters Adele Parks, MBE Adele Parks.
Thank you.
For services to
literature.
That's what she says.
Actually, the king said it.
And then next to her we have Lisa Jill. These 2 are friends, by the way, so expect trouble. They're going to give you trouble. Author of, I say 23 books, but she sold about 50 million books.
No, I haven't.
In 30 languages.
No, I haven't. But
Wrote
that's
all
fine.
of the languages
That's
herself.
fine. Yes, and she's written more books than me as well. So.
And then we have the gentleman, Mr. Matthew Blake. Also a giant, and we'll hear all about his book. And I should say, just before I start, I do have questions, a lot of questions. But because I wanted to be young and hip, what I did was, I haven't told you this.
Oh, God.
But what I did was, I've got a friend who's developing some AI, and I got this chatbot, it's in beta at the moment, to ask 1 question each. So if you get stuck for any of them, I'll give you the AI question. And then you can answer that. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right, fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to start by asking Lisa to give us an elevator pitch, but I want you to picture the scene. You are in this elevator.
Yeah.
The doors have opened, and in steps Reese Witherspoon and Karin Slaughter, and you've got 30 seconds to tell us about your book. None of this is true. Is that the right book?
Yes, it is. That is the right book. Well done. Well done. Yes, None of This Is True is about a famous podcaster who lets the wrong woman into her recording studio and ends up being the unwitting subject of her own true crime podcast.
Wow.
That was so
brilliant.
Much. That was really well under 30 seconds.
Well under.
Actually, I'm a bit.
Yours is much longer. I've seen it on Instagram.
So much longer. Also, I got the wrong book when I was practicing on Instagram. But also, I was fully expecting her to take longer, so I thought,
it normally takes me about 3.5 minutes.
Yes.
So that was.
But it's all right, because I'm going to give you a bit of time to set it up.
Good.
So you are also in a lift.
Oh.
Because we're English, call it lift. And the doors open, and in step the ghost of Elvis Presley and Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
And they say, Heaven is really boring. We need some good books. Tell me about your book.
I would say, okay, so the book is about the aftermath of a woman going missing. And whenever a woman goes missing, sadly, you do look to the family, largely the husband. And in this case, the woman that's gone missing is a bigamist. So there's not one, but two furious husbands left behind when she's gone missing. And whilst they both absolutely swear they've done nothing to her and no harm has come from them, we all know that love is just a shiver away from hate.
Thank you very much.
Can we trust them?
I'll
leave it there.
I got that.
Okay, so Matthew, I'm going to set up just to give you a bit of time to think it.
Sure.
Yeah, set up your elevator. Right. So, elevator doors open.
Yeah.
The world's largest booksellers and book buyers are in there.
Right.
And just as you walk in, Donald Trump is in there, and he's just finishing off
Of course. Yeah.
his book, and he's saying, I got a great book. It's a beautiful book. It's called the Bible. You know, God wanted me as his number one son. I was the best. It was going to be Donald Christ. The other guy lost. He's a loser. And then you walk in, and you're going to sell your book.
Okay, so Anna O is the story of Anna Ogilvy, who kills her two best friends while sleepwalking, then falls into a 4-year-long deep sleep called resignation syndrome, and Dr. Benedict Prince, who's a sleep expert, who has to try and wake Anna up so she can stand trial for the double murder. And people who think Anna's innocent call her Anna O, people who think she's guilty call her Sleeping Beauty, and you get various bits of evidence throughout the book, but you, the reader, in the end have to decide, is Anna guilty or not guilty?
Amazing.
That was very good. Very good.
I think we did well there.
I think you did pretty good.
Also, can I say I liked who you picked in my elevator?
Did you?
Yeah, I have met Muhammad Ali when he was alive, not when he was dead. And
That would be very
and
weird.
I have written a book about Elvis Presley.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they were good choices. Well done.
I did my research.
Did your research?
What about you? What about you? If you had to do a pitch,
Yes.
your elevator is opening, and in walks us three,
Oh, yeah.
and them.
Tough crowd.
What is your pitch?
Okay, if it was just you three,
And
I'd say
them.
they're so tight they wouldn't buy the books.
No, we're generous. Thanks.
Okay, so my book is called Finding Sophie, and it's about a teenager called Sophie, and she goes missing, and so the parents try and find Sophie, and the book is about whether they do find Sophie. I won't tell you whether they do find Sophie or whether they don't find Sophie.
You didn't practice, did you?
No,
You didn't think I was going to be asking that. Right, next.
I told you they were going to be trouble, didn't I? Right, so Lisa, I heard, so this is research, proper research. I read that this book, none of this is true, is the fastest book you've ever written, and you wrote the entire thing in 6-7 days.
No, I think you might have misread. I wrote the first draft, and it was a very good first draft. I didn't have to do an awful lot of work on it afterwards in 5 months.
5 months.
Yes, so almost 5 days, but not quite. Yes. Yes.
So
5
how did you,
months.
because I read it, I loved it. I'm not just saying that because I'm here sitting next to you within arm's length. I really did love it. And it seems like there's a lot of moving parts in there, and it looked like from a reader's perspective as if it was meticulously planned. Is this a book that you had meticulously planned? Or
I think you
else?
also, from your research, know the answer to that question.
But
So if you take the scale from plotter to pantser, I'm at the very extreme end of the pantser scale. I went into it pretty much blind. I didn't have a clue what it was really going to be about or how it was all going to pan out. But actually, compared to my other books, this felt like a really simple setup. Normally my books have got like 3, 4, 5 points of view. They've got 1 or 2, sometimes 3 timelines. They've got different gendered characters, different generational characters. This was just 2 women in Queen's Park, basically. So for me, in one timeline. So for me, this was actually much more simple book to write than my other ones.
But you say that, and as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, you don't have a hook. You've got about 5 hooks. Like, every single part of this made me ask a question. So your protagonist, Josie.
Josie, yeah.
I mean, there are about 1 million questions about her, and then her daughter, Erin, and then her other daughter, Roxy.
Yeah.
And all the way through it, you're asking yourself questions about what's happened with Roxy, what's happened with Erin, what's happened with Josie. Is what she's telling us the truth? And even though the book is called None of This Is True, it's not actually
no, that's not
a
true.
spoiler.
Well, it sort of is and isn't a spoiler, because none of this is true could also mean that some of this is true and some of it is true. But it's fundamentally about this incredibly dysfunctional family, but we're hearing about this family through the vessel of Josie. So we're only hearing Josie's side of the story of her terribly dysfunctional, dark family history. And because I write without a plan, I was essentially getting to my laptop every day, putting Josie in a recording studio with Alex, who's a podcaster, and waiting to find out what Josie was going to say that day, because I didn't know, I didn't have a clue. And even while I was writing her dialogue, I didn't know whether she was telling the truth or not.
I have to say, I think one of the magnificent things that you do with that character in particular is that she's weird, but she's weird in the smallest of the things that she does. So she's not doing kind of mad out there crazy things.
She's not a bunny boiler.
No, she's not boiling rabbits, but she is doing.
She's stealing coffee pods.
Yeah.
And putting them in her knicker drawer. Yeah.
and they're worthless things.
Yes.
Like a drawing from a fridge or a newspaper magazine. What was it about making her do these kind of small things that made her so creepy?
Because I write without a plan and I didn't know who she was or how she was going to impact on Alex's life when I let her into Alex's life. I kind of went in quite slowly. I thought I'm not going to go straight in with her doing her, her big bunny boiling equivalent thing. I needed to feel my way with her. So I just sort of thought, what would she do? She's in this recording studio that Alex isn't watching, but the reader is watching because they're seeing Josie through her eyes, so they can see, they could be party to how Josie's mind works. So what thing could she do? And it needed to be something tiny. So I just built it up like that, in layers of her doing all these tiny weird things. And the more someone does tiny weird things, the creepier and more sinister and more terrifying it becomes.
and because they were small things, if she had gone in with a gun,
yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Don't worry about you.
Just saying.
Is that what you do when you're developing your characters?
We're very different in how we develop things. It's so interesting because you all know we are friends, and you all know we've had long careers. And every time we sit on a stage together, Lisa says, "Well, I'm a pantser," and I go, "I'm a plotter," and I always know how it's going to end. I might not know the complete intricacies of how we'll get there, but I absolutely know how it will end. And with this book, both of you, the thing is she is a bigamist, so she has had 2 lives. So first of all, I've got to have 2 complete lives for one character, just to make my life hard. And then I have multiple viewpoints. So we have her children talking, her teenage kids talking. We have both of the husbands she's left behind talking, her best friend who also feels utterly betrayed talking, and the detective in charge of the case. Clemens, who we know. So, yes, I don't know who wants to talk to me in the morning. So a bit like you, I might arrive at my desk and think, oh, who's up today? But I will know where they will take me to. And I will also look at it and think, okay, so I've had sort of 4, I've had 4 chapters and I haven't talked, Clemens hasn't given me a viewpoint. She would have had a view by now. Let's bring her back. So I have some level of sort of structuring of who I want to speak next. I don't think I've got anyone stealing coffee pots and putting them in the knicker drawer.
Do you use a chapter plan? Doesn't sound like you do.
So
this is sort of the other end of the spectrum.
I'm definitely not.
You're not up the other end.
No, and I don't have, I don't have like a wall chart, and I don't have that kind of thing. I have a spidergram. This is quite famous. My spidergram. What now? Exactly. Kids know what they are. So you might have like your main character in the middle of your A4. It's got to be A4. Any bigger, and you're really over showing off. So an A4 sheet of paper, and you've got your main character in the middle, and then there might be lines coming off. So I don't know, I'd have Stacey in the middle of it, and then I'll have lines coming off saying who she's related to and why she's linked to them. And there might be other lines across sort of the top saying that the sort of what might happen to those people, but it doesn't get any bigger than that.
But is that before you start writing?
Before I start writing. One sheet of paper.
This is so interesting. Because the different ways in which people do. I remember speaking to an author once who said that she'd write the entire novel and then put it in a bin.
That's Gillian McAllister.
Yeah, she does.
Where everybody
And
knows about
start-
Gillian McAllister and
start again.
deleted
Yeah.
first
It's
draft.
crazy.
Yes.
I work as I go along. So I will edit what I wrote yesterday. So in the morning I get up and I edit whatever I wrote yesterday and then keep writing.
Yeah.
And then the next day edit a bit back.
I
again.
do get the Gillian McAllister
Matthew,
thing though.
you're allowed
because
to just put your hand up and say
No, I'm
I
enjoying
just-
it.
How does it work for
Actually, I
you?
wanted to ask you about what you did. Do you?
Where are you
I
on
plot.
this?
I'm the sort of further to the left than
Yeah.
Elly even. Yeah, so it's I don't have post-it notes or spidergrams or organograms or any other typograms, but I do
Telegrams.
I do make sure I know the ending so I can sort of reverse engineer everything else as I go along, and I find it's my plots are quite complicated. They're quite twisty. Particularly because I'm writing a psychological thriller, and we've obviously lots of you have read vast amounts of psychological thrillers, and it's quite difficult to come up with an ending that hasn't been done before. People are very familiar. The husband did it. The husband didn't do it. That sort of thing. So particularly for Anna Rowe, I wanted to come up with an ending that would genuinely surprise people who'd even read all those big psychological thrillers. So I had to know that to begin.
But you can't do that thing of going, oh yeah, and then they found out they had a trust fund. Or something ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? So that's, I agree.
cheat,
That's,
yeah.
you can't cheat it.
So when you're writing, so I know you've all written different other genres, not just crime fiction. So when you're writing other genres, does that way of planning a book change? So I know, Matthew, you write spy thrillers as well as psych thrillers. Does the way you approach a book change depending on what you're writing in terms of planning?
No, I don't know how you guys feel, but I find my writing is best when I sort of follow my instinct and the process that works for me, and you can get very sort of caught up, and there's so many books about how to write, there's so many podcasts, and everyone has a different method, and you can sort of waste a lot of time exploring all those different things. In the end, it's just what works for you, and once you've got it, I sort of stick to it really.
And just get writing.
Yeah,
exactly. No, exactly right. You have to have faith in yourself and in your processes, definitely.
I just want to ask
Are you a plotter or a plotter? Or
no.
planner?
So
What are you?
what I tend to do is I will, I'll plot my book meticulously in like 3 lines. And it's normally...
Parents have lost Sophie.
Parents
I was going to say, I got that from your pitch.
She's now missing. Let's see if they find her. But
that really works. Well done.
Well, also, it's a great book. It's better than...
No, it is a good book. Okay.
No, but the thing that I think, it gets a bad rap, the pants string, and I'll tell you why I think it's a bad rap. When you're kind of by the seat of your pants, you're not really by the seat of your pants. What you're doing is you're plotting this book every single day that you sit in front of the computer. You are replotting and reimagining and perfecting that way of doing it. So you planners, whatever you do, that's like a half job. Me and Lisa, we've got it nailed.
I feel you're correct. I do feel you're correct.
Lisa, do you find that that's a product of experience? Do you
Yes.
find that now you can just totally go without a safety net? You can sort of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can sort of feel myself, as you write more books, you sort of start to think, I know what I'm doing.
It took me quite a few books to get to that point of thinking I wasn't doing it wrong.
Right, yeah.
That there'd be a better way of doing it, and if I could do it a better way, then it wouldn't be so difficult. And
Yeah.
then I realised that, no, this is just the way I do it. And I embraced it. And now I'm actually very, very fond of my ridiculously chaotic and,
I'm very fond of
and
it.
terrifying way of writing. I'm very fond of it.
But it is interesting because I never worried about the way I wrote books. I always thought the way I wrote books was brilliant because I never gave it any thought. I just wrote the book. But when we've done these talks and you tell me the way you write books, I just think, well, that's amazing. amazing and it's so creative and exciting. And I think the fun of it is none of us do the same thing, which is why none of the books are the same.
Yeah, and everybody's different. And
but the reader would never know if they've read a book by a plotter or a pantser. That's another really fascinating thing. No reader would ever think, this has been written by a pantser. You can tell. They just wouldn't. It's just,
I disagree. I disagree.
Okay, hands up. Who in this audience has ever read a book and thought, oh, that doesn't look like the author plotted it at all?
One of the back. Yeah. I'll put it in a way. Who has got to the end of a book and thought, well, that ending was disappointing?
Ah, yes.
Right, so they didn't
They were
plan.
planners. They were
No, they did not plan. Sorry.
I do really good endings, and I
that's
don't
because
plan.
you're a genius.
Oh,
hey,
You can relax. You're a genius.
I should tell you that
There
my
are
role
people who
here,
are not as good as you, is my point.
My role here is as apparently
Moderator.
And that gives the impression that it's going to be moderate. So I've never liked the phrase moderator, and I think actually better, seeing how extreme they are, that they should really call me an extremist. I don't think that would go down.
I don't know, I don't think you should have that either.
Okay, I've been given a signal, so we better crack on.
Where did you
So I want to just very quickly ask you about character. When you're, and this is a question for all of you, when you're thinking of character, developing character, do you see the person in front of you? Do you hear their voice, their patterns of speech? Because I certainly noticed with all of you, when you've got a character and then there's another character walks on the screen, they're very different, and you can tell instantly that they are different people. There's no kind of...
I like the fact you said screen then instead of page.
Yeah.
That just, that shows that
we're
all very visual writers, yes.
I think mostly I don't visualise the character, funnily enough, but I definitely hear them. I often have voices in my head, which I know makes me sound slightly insane. I am.
That was a question, actually, it was a question to Lisa.
You said to any of you. Go on, Lisa.
No, he's being silly. You carry on.
No, that was it. Go.
No, you were answering. He's being silly. Ignore him.
He's a bit of an idiot. But be so nice to him. You're not getting my reading platinum. Just saying. That was it though. I have them in my voice as you've really thrown me.
You can hear,
and I can hear them, but
voices.
I can't see them. I never visualise them.
Do you have the same where you can hear them?
Yeah, and the face is just a fuzz. You know
Doesn't
when
matter.
you know when you've had a dream, a really intense dream, and then you wake up the next morning and you're like, well, he was a man and he was sort of had darkish hair and but you couldn't bring any more detail to their face than that. That's how the characters feel inside my head. Just like fuzzy sort of outlines.
And you do that deliberately so that the reader is kind of part of that contract, so they're filling in those details.
No, just because I can't see it to describe. I remember going through a phase of reading Iris Murdoch, and she used to write a whole page describing the precise outline of a character's nostrils and the shape of their eyebrows. And I find that extraordinary because I just don't see my character's face. Which is why when readers say, who would you like to cast in the role in a fantasy casting of your film, I have got no clue, no idea whatsoever.
And what about you, Matthew? When you're thinking of characters, but particularly to somebody like Anna O, how do you get over this? Particularly when you're dealing with a character who has, who is asleep or who has particular characteristics. How do you bring that to life in the way that you're telling that story?
I should say that there are diary entries from Anna, so it's sort of that she is alive. Quite a bit of the book, but I sort of base it on real life people. I find that's the sort of good model. I don't sort of see the faces very clearly, but I sort of pick a few real life people, then sort of melt them together, and that's basically where the character comes from. And I also I sort of dabble a bit in TV screenwriting and stuff, and they're very keen on big characters that have very different personalities and showing that in a sort of shorthand way when you sort of introduce them. And I think doing a bit of that has helped me in the novels to, you haven't got much time in a thriller to really introduce a character. They've got to sort of speak and live on the page pretty quickly. So I think I've definitely got better at that.
Yeah, I have to say that I kind of first came across this issue to do with character with my first book, You Don't Know Me, and my then editor said that when he was kind of editing the book, he'd read the entire thing out loud because it was written in kind of the patois of a 19-year-old kind of street kid. And so he had to say all of the thing out loud. And I just had these visions of this kind of middle-class man reading the lines of like a 16-year-old kid. I just wondered whether you were ever walking around your house saying the words out loud as you were.
Am I allowed to answer?
Yes, please.
I read it aloud to my husband.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That is the AI question for you.
Oh.
Yes.
So good AI.
Yes.
Have we got time for the AI question?
Yeah, what it says is, I'll just read this out if I'm allowed to. It says that Adele Parks reads her book to her husband when she finishes writing it. How does she ensure he stays awake?
Lots of coffee. No, I actually read it at 3 stages. And he's really good. He's the most honest man in history. And so you can see from his face if he's bored, if he's also so much more practical than me. So he'll say, yeah, that journey would have taken twice that length of time, or didn't she have a skirt on and now she's in trousers? And he holds all that in his head. So we're a really good team. But also, and he never thanks me for saying this, but it is true, he's really emotional. So if I don't get him to cry twice in my novels, I've failed in life. I will fully expect him to cry twice. So yeah, he's so good that he does that, because it's a lot. I'm sure there are writers here in the room, and it's a lot when you ask someone to critique your work, because you're giving them a massive sense of trust, aren't you? And it's the immediate response is to feel offended if they say there's something wrong. But whenever he says anything that is wrong, we fight. And then I go, oh yeah, you're right. And he is always right. And at first I will argue it and go, no, oh, yeah, I see. And it's literally, and now it's much quicker because he sort of sits back and goes, I'll just make a cup of tea. And I'm like, yeah, you make a cup of tea. I'll be cross. You'll come back. I'll work out you were right. And that's how it works.
I did a similar thing with my debut only, and I gave it to my wife to read, and she read it, and I said, what do you think about it? And she said, write something like this, but less boring. She was right as well.
You are still married?
We are still married, yes. Still
Has she read the other books?
What did she think of Sophie?
Yeah, no, she told me she loved it.
Okay,
so,
good.
Well, what I'd said to her about the first one is, once I got published, I said, do you think that before I got published, when I got an agent, do you think anybody would publish it? And she said, yes, I've read loads of books which have been published, which are much worse than this. So I took that as a compliment. What about you guys? Do you have a kind of trusted beta reader for your book? There's somebody who's litmus.
I never used to, but I do now. And a couple of years ago, a guy called Will Brooker wrote a book about me, where he shadowed me while I was writing The Family Remains, and then wrote a book about, how does a commercial writer's year look, and so obviously I was sending him my chapters as I was writing them, and he's just turned into a really trusted reader for me now. So I send him everything, and he reads it for fun, and he gives me the best feedback. Maybe I should marry him.
Yeah. You are married. So
no, that's true. I'm married to somebody else.
Yeah, good point. My books, yes. So maybe not.
What about Matthew? Do you have
I have one or two, that I sort of trust. I'm not one of these people who sometimes I've seen the acknowledgements of books where people sort of send it around to 20 friends and then I just couldn't cope with that. That'd be awful. But because it is subjective, you do get that. In the end, you have to sort of have faith in your own work, and when you've sort of drafted and redrafted, and it's very easy to sort of lose faith in it. So I think you have to maintain that early belief in it. So a couple of trusted people, and then I go with my own sort of instinct.
But it has to be someone who doesn't kill your
baby.
Someone who nurtures.
Can you ask them their AI questions?
AI questions.
Okay, so.
But we've also got to ask about what we're working on next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lisa, yours wasn't such a great question, but the question was, Lisa Jewell sounds like a made-up name. Why does the author Lisa Jewell insist that it is her real name?
It sounds like a Quora question.
And then it says, is she still insisting it's her real name?
What did you type into the
I said, give me a question to ask Lisa Jewell, the author.
Yes, it is my real name. It's got 2 L's, not 1 L, which means it's not a jewel as in a gem. It's actually derivated from Cornwall, and it used to mean jailer. Cornish. It's from an old Cornish word that means jailer. So it's got nothing to do with jewels at all, I'm afraid. It's my real name.
But quite good for
Yeah, it's
crime.
great. Nominative determinism. Yeah, I like that.
What a silly question.
AI, blame technology.
Well, that's good. AI won't take over our lives.
Okay, so I think I'm being urged to wind it up. So,
can we not have Matthew's really quickly?
do you want Matthew's question?
I do want Matthew's
Right.
AI question. Yeah. Is it silly?
It's, I can't remember. Okay, so what it says is, it says, as well as psychological thrillers, the writer of Anna O has also written spy thrillers. Before he was an author, was Matthew a spy? And then it says,
bonus points for
and
originality.
then it says, his cover is as a speechwriter in Westminster. Is that true that you were a speechwriter?
It wasn't
in
a cover,
Westminster?
but yeah, no, I wasn't speechwriter. Yeah. It'd be a very boring cover. I think you're going to invent something much more exotic. And
that's what they do for the spooks, isn't it? They give you boring covers.
That is true. That is what they do.
And he's looking a bit nervous now, as if I might have blown his cover. Not me, the AI blew the cover. Yeah. And then it says, if he denies it, he's definitely a spy. So.
Right. I thought the AI was sort of all knowledgeable, all powerful. They give you a definitive answer.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah.
Well, that, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our session. So I wonder whether you could please put your hands together and thank our lovely guests.
Thank you as well.
Do we stay?
Would you like
You
us
can-
to clear
you
the
can leave
stage
now.
for you?
So come on.
It's your stage now.
Yeah, it's mine. It's my go. Thank you very much to a lovely panel, and to you as well, because that is the last panel of the evening. You have been a great audience. I know, like someone like me always says that, but you have, because it's quite a long time to sort of sit there. I know I made you stand up occasionally, but it's what I always find as a crime writer myself is these events, and I've done this is the third year of doing this. It's we write such dark things, and yet the people who write them are so charming and lovely and funny, and I think the way that the audience reacts to that and responds to that shows that you are the same. So give yourselves a big round of applause. And thank you as well. Thank you for putting up with this quite hideous view. I know it's hard, but as the sun sets over London, it also sets, I'm afraid, on SlaughterFest 2024. Thank you very much. Remember the books, there are signed books there. Authors are still milling until we get forcibly ejected and frog marched from the building. Please do hang around. Thank you. I've been Simon Toyne, and good night.